All right. So from the beginning, it was Frankie, Morgan, and Iku.
Yep.
And we basically all had a dream together where we made contact with the god Azael, who is the god of light. And then we all woke up in Galen, where we ultimately kind of found out through a series of shenanigans.
You actually met Isaiah. That was the first person who talked to you,
Mm-hmm.
like right after you guys broke out of your stasis and or your lull. Um, you guys were in the Swift Rope Inn, which was an inn on the outskirts of Galen.
Mm-hmm.
But keep going.
Uh, well, so without necessarily outlining all of like what necessarily occurred, what we found out in the beginning was that Isaiah was the leader of this old gods group who was essentially trying to bring about and it seems control the old gods. And so he was using a form of mind control while the party was asleep. They had
Yeah.
kidnapped and conducted experiments on the party, or not necessarily
So you
experiments. Well, go on.
you three weren't controlled after you had left the inn. You guys were basically free from his clutches.
Right, when we were
Um,
conscious.
yeah, but he was still able to control you while you slept.
Yeah, so we had found that Isaiah had kidnapped the three of us, and Frankie and her brother Arthulus were twins who were basically like um, the chosen of Azael, who is repeatedly reborn over and over and over again, like
Yeah, it's
reincarnates.
it's basically the Avatar in a way. Like one dies and then one's born again.
Mm-hmm.
Another is born. But keep
So,
going.
so these champions of gods, right, have like exceptionally powerful souls, and so in order to both sort of hamper Azael and further their plans, they kidnapped Frankie and Arthulus, who incarnated as twins, and successfully implanted like a fragment of an old god into the corpse of Arthulus, who died during experimentation. Uh, I do recall that he was considered failed and then ended up waking up a little bit later, but anyways, they, after finding this out, the group confronted Isaiah. I remember he had a well, he had a couple soul wells which were made by like sacrificing thousand or like very large numbers of living creatures into them,
Yeah.
and then could be used to conduct like exceedingly powerful magic.
Yep.
Morgan, during one of our, so while we were investigating Isaiah, actually I didn't even think we realized it was Isaiah at first. We were looking
You guys
into
were in the
something.
temple.
Yeah, we were looking into something that led us to a temple offshore. So we go to this temple, we find another one of these soul wells underneath, and there we encounter one of Isaiah's laboratories. And Morgan grabs a sword, which is the sword that was referenced in this last session. But this is
Yeah.
essentially a sword that shoots spikes out all over her hand, fusing the sword to her hand quite painfully.
And she can't let go
And it speaks to her telepathically,
telepathically.
which
Yeah.
Morgan never explained to anybody.
Yeah, she I remember she discreetly hid that.
So she would like constantly be muttering to this sword, and 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 we also discover no, we don't discover that yet. So we go back to town. Iku starts a reskins the religion of the old gods and publishes a book which is exceedingly influential. Starts sparks a new worship of these old gods here in Galen.
When was that, before or after you started impersonating King Paragus? Because Paragus was murdered by Isaiah at one point.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, there was a. Jeez, that's true.
So I'll explain this segment. So there's a king who was in control of Galen with a small council of advisors, and the king was killed by Isaiah at one point. So Iku is essentially using a silent image of King Paragus to control the masses and influence them using his new book. But okay, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so old god worship begins anew in Galen, which like it hadn't been around for a very, very long time. Iku uses illusions to create basically like miracles and experiences of the old gods to further, drive this home. People start thinking Galen's like this like chosen city, right? And Mordaunt, who is going to war with Galen and who Isaiah actually, it turns out, works for, ultimately inflict or they put a poison, which is like, it spreads very easily and it corrupts like living things, into the sewers of Galen, where it spread to the rats and then spread to the people, in very large part because Iku...
You guys tried to make rations with the rats to feed the poor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we fucking did that. So Mordaunt's poison spread rather effectively. And we basically it was spreading at the time, but we didn't really know what was going on quite yet. We actually found out after we traveled to the future that it spread on such a scale that it wiped out the city.
Well, it wasn't so Mordaunt accelerated it because it wasn't spreading fast enough for it to be effective. So what they did was, when Isaiah regained power in Mordaunt, he sent grain crates and various other food items to Galen as like a faux peace offering, and those are all infected with the disease as well. So like that's when things really started getting out of control.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, the party kind of steps away from Galen for a little bit to go move west. At this point, Morgan ditches the party, leaves. Iku is looking for a woman named Rose. Iku actually tried to ally with Isaiah, but Isaiah was intent on like controlling the power. So even though Isaiah was ultimately Iku's enemy, Iku is still actually trying to further what the cult is doing. So there's this woman named Rose who is going around trying to stop what the cult is up to. So Iku's on the hunt for her, and the party meets this new character named Taj Groth, who, Ray, you might be able to tell us a little bit more about. Or we can move forward, whichever you prefer.
I mean, I can explain it too.
Go for it. Remember.
Taj Groth was a Tempest cleric, which was like a sect of clerics that where basically their job was to seek out whoever the incarnate was and help them on their journey. And Tajgroth was selected to be the cleric to do that. And Tajgroth was a changeling posing as a dragonkin, but he never really revealed that to the party. So, or they never really revealed that. So Tajgroth went to Galen to seek out the group and managed to find them. And this was after they had defeated Isaiah's body in Mordon, or this was before. Tajgroth ended up going with them to fight Isaiah, and so Tajgroth got the sword fused to their hand, and then basically became a vampire because of it. And Isaiah was trapped in the sword as well. But because Isaiah was able to use his magic on Tajgroth in the same vein, basically the same way that Isaiah was able to control the party while they slept, he did the same to Tajgroth, and that's how he became in possession of like the vials of poison that was infecting the city, plus ethereal oil to make a new phylactery.
Right.
And so he basically, what happened behind the scenes was Tajgroth paid a sailor, the sleepwalking Tajgroth, paid a sailor to transport Isaiah in the new phylactery back to Mordon. That's why when Tajgroth woke up and the sword was empty, that was the reason.
Yes. Okay, so we also forgot to mention, before Morgan leaves the party to go west, and before the party meets Tajgroth,
Morgan went back to Port Chis, which is Armith.
Oh, okay, so she went south. What had happened was the sword that was fused to her hand got dipped into a soul well. I'm gonna need some help with this. With the
I can explain that.
Okay.
So after they encountered Isaiah in a cave, in the cave below Galen, and they basically found him in his lab, in one of his labs. He had been making his own soul well, and as they were trying to defeat him, he fled to the soul well and jumped in. Basically a Hail Mary to try and like get whatever power from it to continue the fight. And instead, it destroyed him, but because Morgan threw in the sword, at that point the sword had detached from Morgan's flesh. Morgan threw the sword in the well, and the sword became the new phylactery for Isaiah, and Isaiah basically became extremely powerful, but decided to fly off. Became like, you could see his true lich form too, like when this happened.
And this also freed the vampire lord Arcanon from the sword, who it turns out had been trapped inside the sword the whole time.
It didn't free Arcanon there. It just put Isaiah's soul in with Arcanon. Arcanon didn't get freed until your second encounter with Isaiah, like near Mordon. After you had destroyed Isaiah's body, Arcanon was able to be freed.
Okay. So once we meet Tajgroth and we return to the city later on to Galen, we meet Trent, and then at some point we decide to sail to Mordon, but I can't quite recall why.
So there was originally a peacekeeping mission set by Ambassador what's her name? Rhea, there we go. Ambassador Rhea it was a peacekeeping mission to try and like iron out details of a truce. And that was the sailing. That was when Trent you guys met Trent. Trent was a aspiring. He was originally a thief, but he was an aspiring elementalist who wanted to regain his powers as an elemental. So he was given the task to steal a very high-priced necklace from, or dagger, I'm sorry, from a wealthy man's daughter in Galen, who was like, turned out she was like a pirate, basically, or like a smuggler. And that's how you guys met him, was he was trying to like get that dagger from that woman who was on the same ship that you guys like had, basically like the same crew that you guys were friends with. The ship was called the Nightwind, I believe. That's how you met Trent. And Trent helped you guys sail across the Regal Sea to get to Mordon. And that's when you encountered a strange Leviathan-esque creature that attacked your ship. But you guys survived it.
Mm-hmm. We defeated it, which I think like actually removed a major threat that was stopping people from traveling across.
You guys didn't kill it, but it just like you injured it enough to where it fled.
Oh, I see. Okay. So we went to Mordon. We met a bunch of really important people there. I stole some pretty important shit. And then Iku had a vision of...
You were kidnapped by the Rhymesteel and taken to for questioning, taken up north for questioning, and then they recognized you as not a true foe. Mm-hmm. And you took an elixir that opened up your mind to their patron saint, their patron god.
Mm-hmm.
Yule, yeah.
And he broke off his antlers and gave me a couple pieces.
Yep.
I can't quite recall what they did.
But he couldn't... Well, so he couldn't give you his boon because of what you were. Mm-hmm. And so you... as you were like talking to him, Azael intervened and showed you like your true self. And I think that at that point you were able to hear everything Frankie was saying, because originally Isaiah had put a curse on you that you couldn't hear, right, that you were her brother. Mm-hmm. And that was when that curse was broken. Azael showed you the truth and basically diverted all the latent power that you had in you, like of your incarnation, like gave it all to Frankie. And so basically at that point you were pure Eldridge.
Oh shit. Okay, so Iku also then knows that Francesca was his sister and that he was Arthurus.
Yep.
Oh shit. Okay, I gotta keep that in mind. So remind me, so I do recall that something really important happened in Mordon before we left, and also that Iku had a vision where, looking from Elder's Rise at like towards Mordon, something like apocalyptic was happening due to... So
you had two visions. One was city ruins with apocalyptic, like everything was like kind of frozen, and you were met by an Eldritch being. You didn't recognize it as an old god. You recognized it as just an Eldritch being, but it introduced itself as a herald, and the herald's name was Shabbath Ka, or Kanaz, actually. Sorry, wrong guy. But how do you show to players?
There we go. Yes, this fucking scary looking thing.
So
like Vecna's.
That that told you like basically what was going to happen in the future, that the old gods are coming and they will destroy this world.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So Mordana is doomed, and then I also met one of the old gods.
You
I think the
met.
Gluttony one. Yogg-Saron, I think, is the one I met.
Yeah, that's probably what it was.
It was like a bunch of mouths.
Here is Yogg-Saron.
Actually, that's not the one I met.
Okay, then
This one was almost like a
Shub-Viggorath.
plant. Yeah, it was almost like a bunch of Venus flytraps.
This
Yeah,
one.
I think it was this one. Shub-Viggorath.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so this is the one that I met. Shub-Viggorath. Yeah, so I had a vision of this as well. And then ultimately, we left Mordon, came back to Galen. We learned there was a Mordani army that was approaching from the north towards Galen.
You had a vision too at one point where it was like foreshadowing the army leaving Mordon after a speech from one of its generals.
So we come back, and then while we're back here, this council that has been like running the city turns out to have some pretty evil people on it.
It was mainly Engineer Hadley.
Who was
because
like undead.
So as the backstory behind that, I don't think I explained that to you guys really. So the backstory was that after you killed Isaiah or defeated Isaiah the first time, the guards basically had control of that area of cavern, and Engineer Hadley was given like all the notes that Isaiah had accumulated over the years, and he was very, interested in the soul wells and how they worked. So basically, they were harvesting whatever they could down there. Like he rebuilt that cave into his own lab, and you guys eventually encountered him down there, or like confronted him down there. But he had turned himself into a lich, an incomplete lich, in order to like make these soul wells. And to make a soul well, you have to like basically take a piece of yourself to start it off. And so that's
Like
what he
Horcrux.
did. Yeah.
Oh.
So he made 4 soul wells and was attempting to make a bomb with the soul wells.
He did make a bomb.
Yeah, he did.
But it wasn't soul well fueled?
No, it was.
It was? Okay.
It was just like an orb of concentrated souls with like explosive charges hooked to it. And the souls are like very volatile and unstable. Like a pure soul is volatile and unstable.
Yes. Throughout all of this, as kind of a backstory, because it kind of becomes increasingly relevant with this bomb, there was this kid named Ash who we encountered very, very early, and at first we were kind of whatever about him, and then I started grooming him to become kind of a warrior of the old gods, and throughout the campaign I have just kind of continued to encourage him in this direction. There was one time where we like put him up on this arcane bomb, and like he had some kind of arcane shock and then passed out, and hopefully we see something happen with that someday down the road. But we sent this bomb to where the army was going to blow us up here, and all of us, including Ash and Emily as well, who was another little orphan girl who had come with us, who was sort of Frankie's protege, whereas Ash was mine. We all climbed through, I'm getting ahead of myself. The army's moving south. We plant this great big bomb in the ground,
That's not the only bomb that you guys had either.
It's not?
But no, you had another bomb made, or there was another bomb that was created by Isaiah, and you guys had detonated it near, like under the Falls Edge Tavern.
Yes, that's right. We had to blow up like.
You didn't have to. You chose to, though.
Yeah. So we had been exposed to like arcane fallout like a couple different times, which I think the first time it turned all of our hair white, and it did some other crazy shit.
It was 3 rolls off the mild magic table each time.
Mm-hmm. So we're standing in a bunch of like arcane radiation essentially, and then that happened the second time when we basically intercepted the army that was coming from Mordaunt to destroy our fair Galen. Blew him up with another arcane nuke, but this time it tore a fucking portal like open in the air above the site. So we just straight up walked right up to the core of where it all went down, straight through all the fallout. I think there was some weird stuff on the site that we'd picked up, like some crystals or something that were forming.
That at Falls Edge, that's where you picked up those crystals. You didn't. You just went through the portal here.
Oh yeah, so we climbed through this portal, and then this portal moved us way south down here to Boca Turker.
Yeah, you appeared at a derelict castle.
Yep,
way
to the south. And also way in the future. I think 1,000 years in the future.
Yep.
So that brings us to the start of the Exodus arc.
So a little backstory on what happened with Emily. Basically, Emily was an orphan that was with a bunch of other children at the orphanage in Galen, and Frankie had dedicated her time to like donating and trying to like reinforce the orphanage and help the poor people in general. And Emily wanted to become a cleric like Frankie, and they had made some success on it. But after they had hopped through the portal 1,000 years into the future, Emily sort of started to fade out of existence and then faded entirely. And the reason for that is that, so back to the Mordani, a lot of a big reason why the Mordani were like seemingly unstoppable is because their fighting forces were undead. And you guys saw evidence of that when you fought Isaiah in the fields north of Mordaunt at the crossroads, and then you saw that also when the bomb went off, when you guys attacked their invading force. Like the armor turned like rusted and the swords fell apart, and there was like old tattered bones where flesh should have been laying. And Emily, what had happened was basically the Mordani were the first to experiment with soul wells, and Isaiah took that technology from them, like, and started experimenting himself. And so the Mordani had sacrificed a large portion of their populace to like pioneer these things. And so Isaiah and their leader were sort of using necromancy to like raise like hordes of undead to fight for Mordaunt. And so that's like what ended up happening there. That's why like there was a lot of people, there was like armies would just collapse into nothing after you defeated them. And the Emily part comes in is that she was also sacrificed at one point to the soul well, but her spirit lingered. Like she became undead. And that's why it was like really hard for Frankie to teach her cleric stuff in the first place. And so when she went through the portal, she left her body behind entirely.
And she turned to ash.
She
Oh,
turned
just
into
faded.
Ash.
Yeah,
She
she ended up
faded.
turning into Ash.
Oh, that's the flavor I chose? Okay, she turned into Ash.
Yeah, Frankie scoops him up.
That's right. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I happened to have just been watching that episode before this
Okay.
session.
I didn't remember how I had her go out, but that's...
Yeah, she was kind of gradually getting weaker, and then she kind of like faded away and then evaporated, or turned to ash rather. But yeah, so all of this basically brings us to the start of the Exodus arc, where we have emerged from the portal. We went to this village where we met some people. I don't really remember who they are, but ultimately they had us go to this mountain where we were supposed to kill some ogres in a cave to kind of help out the village.
Wasn't that the episode where we met Declan and also killed Declan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, was that part retconned?
No, it wasn't. He died.
Okay.
He died the same way. The only difference is Tajroth's not there, technically. Yeah. Tajroth ran off with Trent. That's what I ended up saying.
The scoundrels. Okay. Okay.
So we went to the mountain.
We went to the mountain, or we ended up encountering Declan, fighting him and killing him. I think what we were trying to do, and I could be mistaken, but I want to say was Declan who we were trying to put that undead guy's soul into?
Oh, Sagra. Okay, so Sagra, real quick. He was discovered. So Trent had an encounter with another elementalist in the docks of Galen during his one-shot session. And he lost and was swept out to sea. And he was marooned on the same island you guys found Isaiah's first lab on. And in an unexplored part of the island, he found a skeleton that had been possessed, but it was like a skeleton possessed by a demon. The skeleton's like, I need you to bring me a body, like a new vessel. And so Trent goes to a member, like a small group of Sun Tribe members who are still alive, and managed to convince one of them to come with him. And so he had the demon transfer into that member, which was, his name was Sagra. And so that's when the guy accompanied you guys all the way through the portal. And then you tried to do the same thing with Declan, but there was something missing from there was a ritual that was needed that you guys didn't do.
Yes. Yep. And then I think as a result, Sagra actually ended up dying.
He didn't die. He just flew away.
Oh, he flew away. He disappeared.
Yeah, he's not dead. He's just somewhere else now.
Yeah, he's somewhere else, and Declan is dead. So then, after killing the rest of the ogres in the cave, we encountered Glug, or actually we encountered Glug and then killed the rest of the ogres in the cave. And that would be Glug Gurgle of the Curdle clan.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bogrock and Ash. Oh,
yes,
sorry.
That's right. Yeah, we had Bogrock as well. Bogrock, if I'm not mistaken, was a companion of Tajgroth.
Yeah.
Who was teaching Ash.
He was retconned to be a companion of Glug, though.
Okay. He was retconned to be a companion of Glug. So he was just with us then when we went into... So does Bogrock belong to... Do Glug and Bogrock both belong to the future then? Glug, I guess, belongs to the future, right?
Well, Glug does, yeah, and Bogrock does now. So that's just entirely retconned.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So Glug is actually... How familiar is Glug with technology then?
Glug hadn't really, before Glug left the Curdle clan, he hadn't really like gone too far out of like away from home,
I gotcha. Okay.
so he wouldn't have seen much.
Okay. So, getting back to it, we essentially go into the mountain, encounter Glug, who sort of joins in and helps us. We team up, kill the rest of the ogres, and find a hidden stairway deep within the cave. The stairway leads to a teleportation device, which bounces us all the way up to Elder's Rise in the center of this sea, which I can't recall what the sea was called.
It was called the Regal Sea.
The Regal Sea, yes. And then in Elder's Rise, we find sort of an advanced machine production lab where Isaiah is sort of... It was almost like one of his bodies was like...
One of his bodies was like the central nervous center of that facility. And he was controlling everything through it.
Yep. We also created punch cards for ourselves there, so that we can use the more Donnie travel devices. And we took a drone with us.
So, real quick, one of the things you didn't do is you didn't print copies of them. So when you put them in to go back, you didn't print ones to go back the other way.
Oh, so
yeah, they're like a one-way ticket sort of thing.
Oh, I see. So, okay, so those are just gone then. No sweat.
Yeah.
But we did pick up a drone, and Iku gave that drone to Glug, not having much familiarity with machines and being more of a magic sort of dude. And after destroying Isaiah's body and teleporting back way down south, way down here, we then found ourselves captured by vampiric forces of Arcanon, who are also way down south. I thought Arcanon was like in Kyrish, sort of.
No, this is the capital city.
Oh, okay. So we're way south, so Mordon is like on the other side of the fucking world.
Yeah.
The endless ocean. I wonder if there's anything out there.
Who knows?
Okay, and then I think that's basically the story of everything so far. We've definitely skimmed over a couple of things, but that's the gist of it.
I can't quite read this capital. Can you tell me what it says?
It says Kamigorsk, but it's just Gorsk for short because the city was usurped 1,000 years ago when Arcanon regained power. So it's just Gorsk now.
Gorsk. Okay. Is there anything else we want to capture for this?
Let's see. So I'm thinking, you guys were originally like you guys were originally going to go west, so like towards Dandara, because Morgan the blacksmith had told Morgan that they're having an expedition out there. So that was just one little tidbit. Like a lot happened out west that you guys weren't entirely aware of.
Yeah, we should definitely also mention that when we came through the portal and while we were exploring one of these mountains up here, Frankie fucking turned to stone, which was not
she turned to stone in the cave with the same time that Trent and Tajgroth disappeared.
Yeah, so I definitely need to make note of this cave so that I can someday come back and reclaim her stony figure.
Oh, so what happened was she turned to stone, and you molded earth and like shoved her into the wall, and then like basically
That's
like
right.
Han Solo'd her.
To protect her. Yeah, that's right. So I have to come back. She's like in the wall of this cave. And yeah, that's basically the story
That's the
of
story so
Galen and
far.
Exodus.
And there's more little details like Isaiah's origin, which I could go over if you want me to, but
Yeah. Anything else y'all want to capture on this?
Feel like we've done a pretty good job of covering. Well, I guess so. The main political uh, conflicts have been between like Mordani and Galemore, right? We haven't really touched too much on
more.
Kyrish and Armith.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Mordaunt and Galen or Galemore were like against each other like for a long time, but
Right.
because their armies were so strong, it was usually a stalemate, and the only access to the continents were through the ice barriers, which is like nearly impossible to traverse. And then Port Chiss also was like they're neutral, so like they don't want to deal with any of that. Armith was mainly a neutral like country, kind of like Switzerland.
I think we
Okay.
did learn though that Mordani was beginning to push south towards Armith at the same time that they were invading us in Galen.
Yeah, well, that was like recent. And then when Galen failed, they were able to like uh convince Armith to support them entirely.
Damn.
Wow.
Yeah, so now with Arcanon free from the sword, which I don't know if we went into too much detail about how Arcanon actually got freed.
So you guys had been fighting Isaiah. He had taken the name Falric, which was it was just like an armor-clad warrior, bodyguard of the Emperor of Mordon. And you originally, what was supposed to happen was you guys were working with the Rhymesteel Circle to capture an officer and interrogate him to like help their war effort. And the officer ended up being Falric, and which in turn was Isaiah. And you guys damaged Falric enough to where Isaiah lost all of his power, and Arcanon like took over from that point and forced Isaiah back into the sword. And instead of like attacking you guys, he just basically turned into his vampire form and flew off.
Yes, so Arcanon and Isaiah were apparently already enemies when Arcanon was freed. And
Yeah, but only by like their circle of beliefs. Like Arcanon was a vampire, and he didn't take too kindly to Eldridge like people. Like he didn't like what Isaiah represented. Like just the fact that he wanted to bring an Eldritch being into the world just for chaotic reasons.
mm, well, yes. Okay, so Arcanon pieced out, flew south, presumably to here, to Gorsk.
Yeah. You thought originally he was flying south to fuck up Galen.
Yeah,
I was like,
so
nah.
that motherfucker flew across the world. He fucking migrated south to Albaros, and and I guess he's just been ruling. Like, what happened? Well, we don't know yet, but presumably he just returned and took over.
Well, they couldn't beat him, so he took control of the city.
Yep, yep. So the reason in the last session that Iku told the vampires everything was because Iku knows that Mordon and fuck was his name? The king, the vampire dude.
Arcanon.
Arcanon. That they are opposed. So Iku stands to benefit from the vampires wanting to combat Mordon.
Yes. And they don't seem as like crazy as Isaiah did. But
Yes, fucking true. They do not seem as crazy. But that's what that was about.
but there's still a lot of revelation about this like vampire ruler, about these rulers. Like, you know, there are people who suffer on both sides from their own governments.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. Like going forward is like, what happens to the lowest person on the totem pole?
Was Azael taking the remaining light away from Iku relevant to any plot points as far as like what I would have told Arcanon, like in terms of like how we got there?
So remember when he smiled after he said like, well, it seems Azael's light has completely faded from this work
Oh
from this.
yeah, that's true. He knew what that meant when Frankie.
When Frankie turned to stone, he knew that like that means Azael is so like his influence is so non-existent that he decided that putting his like own savior or like own prophet into stasis was more beneficial.
The prophet is in stasis. I wonder if that means that if I were to spread the word of Azael, Frankie could one day be resurrected or like depetrified.
Possibly.
Interesting.
Possibly.
Interesting. Okay.
Or perhaps Azael will find a different suitor,
Mm-hmm.
but we would see.
Like reconstitutes itself. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
That's
That's it
go
for
ahead.
me.
That's a pretty good deep dive.
Oh, where's the Gurgle clan located?
The Gurgle
The Curdle
Curdle clan is located here, or right outside of here.
And what does that say?
It says
Dark
Darkbridge.
Darkbridge. Okay. Interesting. And the Gurgle clan. Quick lore on the Gurgle clan. What do we know about those?
Curdle clan. The
The
Curdle
Curdle.
clan.
Curdle clan. Sorry.
It's a tribe of goblins that are well known in the area, and that's where Glug came from. And you guys were told that this same clan has taken full control of a silver mine near Darkbridge.
Mm-hmm. And the story with Glug is that he was a part of this clan, and then he had a meeting with Declan, and during that meeting they were attacked by vampires, and that's when he was infected.
Yes.
Knowing that his clan would not accept him as a vampire, he kind of exiled himself to the outskirts.
But you have no idea what your clan feels about you. They're probably like think you were killed or something.
They don't
They don't know what happened to you.
The last thing that they would have seen was me running away with Bogrock and Mungo. That would have been the last that they saw of us.
Oh, okay.
Because that's when Mungo died, unfortunately.
How did Mungo die again?
Mungo was captured by the Curdle clan.
Oh,
Bogrock and Glug went to rescue him. They got him out of the camp, but then a volley of arrows shot him down as they were all running away.
I see. So you were at odds with them. So
yeah,
they definitely don't miss you.
No, but they don't. But you're right. They don't know if I've died since then. They don't know what's happened to me since then.
Well, that'll be an interesting reunion.
Okay. Good stuff. I'll go ahead and stop the recording here.
All right.